you're a player, you don't know that many major chords. We hang out and then you get bored, and you leave me here like I'm your landlord. You come back and say I'm sorry, boo, and I know you.
Hi, welcome back to Sabertooth Pottery. Today's video is going to be about trimming your bowl. I make a lot of tutorial videos on how to work with clay, so if you're interested in what I have to post on how to work with clay, if you need some tips or you just need some inspiration, go ahead and feel free to click like and subscribe and the little notification button. Real quick, before we get started, I just want to go over why we trim, do we have to trim, and the tools that we're going to need. So the reason we trim is because generally when we take the bowl off the wheel, the bottom of it doesn't look that great. So we'll put the bowl back on the wheel once it's dried to the leather hard stage, which I will go over in this video of how to know when your bowl is leather hard and what that means. And once we put it back on the wheel, then we use our tools to clean up the bottom of it. We can make a foot, and that's just what it's called. It doesn't look like a foot. It's usually just a ring around the bottom, and that will support the bowl without it being flat. You can make a flat foot, but it just looks better when you clean up the foot and you have a nice little ring on the bottom. And it's easier to glaze as well. Do you have to trim the bottom? No, you don't. You can leave it as is. You do want to be mindful though, if you have a really thick bottom on the bottom of your bowl, that if it's too thick, it can explode in the kiln. You generally don't want anything to be thicker than 3/4 of an inch. That's about as thick as you want to get things. If it gets too thick, like I said, it can explode, it can crack, it can cause other problems. One of the things that happens when you trim the bowl is some of the clay is removed, and therefore it makes the bottom of the bowl lighter and it makes it thinner, and that's just less of a problem. So before we get started, let's just quickly go over the tools that we need. Now, I'll warn you, I do not remember the names of the tools. There are so many names out there. I have funny little names for all the tools I have, like roundy swoopy poke, so I'm not gonna tell you what the names are of these. They each have their own little name, but I will show you them so you can see. This is one of the more common cutting tools. It's very dirty. I'm sorry about that. I'm a slob and I don't clean my tools. But we have this guy here. It's a bigger one. It's got like a bird beak and a rounded backside. I like to use this little guy here. It's a triangle and also dirty. Needle tool. And then this one's my favorite one for trimming, and that is the double-sided ribbon tool. It has a rounded edge and a more triangular edge, and this is really good for getting those corners and just peeling off the sides, as I like to call it. And then another tool I really like to use is this one here. It looks like a little dentist's tool. And it's a nice little curved kind of knife. Sturdy. You can use as many tools as you need or are comfortable with, or the ones that you like. As you're going, you'll begin to learn which tools you like best to trim with. These are just kind of like the basic tools that you'll find in any ceramic pack that has all your basic tools in it. So I'm presenting these just because they're the most common ones that you will find, and you probably already likely have. So that way we can trim a bowl and hopefully you'll have that tool. If you don't have these exact ones, that's fine. Just use what you're comfortable with. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so one of the first things I want to talk about is drying your bowl and making sure that it's ready to be trimmed. So here I got both of my bowls outside, and I have this plastic wrapped around the rim, and the reason why I do that is because the rim is thinner than the bottom and it tends to dry quicker. So while it's sitting out here in the sun, I like to make sure that the rim stays moist enough so it doesn't dry quicker than the rest of the pot. I do this on the inside, and then I flip it over and I do it on the outside. And you don't have to set them outside in the sun. It really depends on how fast you want them to dry. You can leave them in your studio space overnight with a piece of plastic gently laid over the top of them. And depending on how hot it is or how humid it is, really depends on how fast they're going to dry. So here I have them turned over, and really the important part is how dry the foot is, because that's the part we're going to focus on trimming. We'll do a little bit of trimming on the side of the bowl here, but the main part is the foot of the bowl. And the tricky part about learning when it's time to trim at first is when's the right stage of dryness. So we want the clay to not be tacky, like right when you take it off the wheel and you put it down, it's really sticky and it's really wet. As it goes overnight, sometimes it'll still be really tacky, like if you touch it, it'll stick to you. Here is almost right, but it's a little bit, I don't know if you can see this, but my finger's like pulling the clay right here. It's not exactly where I want it to be. The best way to describe the right amount of wetness to dryness is what we call leather hard, which means that it will be a bit supple, but it won't crumble like it's too dry, but it will be flexible enough. So it'll feel like nice cured leather. And we're almost there. So these are almost ready to trim. All right, so we have our bowls and they're about leather hard now. Yeah, that feels nice and good. So just so you know at home what leather hard feels like if you don't already, it's not going to be tacky, like it's not going to stick to your hand. It's going to feel soft like suede, yeah, but still damp. You can feel that there's moisture in it, but it's nice and hard and stiff, but not so hard and stiff that it's obviously very dry and that'll break on you. This is exactly where I want it to be. Before we get started, we want to make sure we know how much to trim. And what I like to do is I like to put my hand in here and then my hand on the other side, and your hands can kind of gauge how much space there is between your fingers. I can feel here that there's not a lot of space at the very bottom and that there's a lot of space over here. It's much thicker over here. So I'm going to try to trim that point there. And that's where I'm going to put my foot. Okay, so first before we trim, we want to center our bowl. And the reason we want to do this because if we have it not exactly on center, and we do this, that's going to be the foot of our bowl, which is like not in the center. So to find our center, there's a couple ways we can do that. You can either tap center it. While the wheel is moving around, you'll tap it till it gets centered. You can do what I like to do. I use my finger here, and where it pushes against my finger the most, I push it in the opposite direction. I push it away. Or my instructor taught me is you can take your needle tool and gently brush it against one side, and the part, you find the end of where it's scored, and then the center of that is where you need to push it. So the part where it's scored, the center part of where it's scored is the part you need to push away from you. That's why your needle tool's brushing against that, because it's too close to you. All right, now that we have it centered, have a lump of clay set aside. We're going to use this to anchor our bowl in place. If we don't anchor our bowl while we're trimming it, it's gonna go flying off in one direction. We put a nice roll here and we push down in the middle and we keep pushing, and as you're pushing towards the outside, it starts to curve around the bowl. And we're gonna do that 2 more times. We want 3 anchors. So push to the middle, push towards the outside. And we push down and away. And what this is gonna do is make sure that we're not accidentally pushing the bowl. And we have our hand here on the other side also to make sure that we don't push the bowl away. Because if we do that, then it's not centered again. We have to start all over. Push down and away. All right, at this point, for good measures, I like to kind of just gently push this part gently against the bowl. And that just is a little extra measure. Make sure that it's nice and steady. All right, and then I have my finger marks here where I want to put the foot. So I'm going to take my needle tool and I'm going to mark where I want the foot. Generally, if I don't have a flat bottom, first I'd go over it with our beak tool, our beak-shaped ribbon tool, and I'd peel off the bottom, but we're pretty flat here and I don't want to take any more off the bottom. So we're going to make the foot, just put the pin tool down and turn the wheel on, and then go to the next score mark and do the same thing. Don't push too hard because you don't want to go through. You just want to put a nice little circle there. So I'm going to start with my beak-shaped ribbon tool, and I'm going to just push down and away. From the foot, so we can get some of this edge cleaned up here. I'm gonna come in sideways here real quick and just take off a bit. It's not gonna make it perfectly center, but it's just to get rid of some of that unevenness right there. So I'm gonna come back and do the same thing again. And you're gonna kind of follow the shape of the bowl as you're pushing down gently. Get to the wall of the bowl, and that's where you're gonna stop. All right, so here I like to take either my little triangle ribbon tool, which I'm just gonna clean up really quick because it's messy, or one of our other tools, our other ribbon tools that has the round and the triangle. You can use either or. I'm just gonna use this guy because he's nice and sharp. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start pushing down to where the wall starts. So and we're going to start right here at where we scored, where we're starting our foot. And we're pushing straight down. And what this is going to end up doing is making this nice and even. Okay, so that's about as deep as I want my foot, so I don't cut through. And then I'm going to basically continue the wall here. I'm going to line up the wall so that it's like, it flows nicely into the foot. So already we have our nice foot here. And we're going to do the same thing on the inside, but I'm going to take the smaller, like triangular shaped ribbon tool for this. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to push down with the corner, but not too much because we don't want to cut through the bottom. How we know we've done enough is if we look to the side and we see the wall, if it kind of like connects through the bottom as if like this foot weren't here, that's how we can tell if we've cut down far enough. If the bottom of this outside foot continues with the shape, the curve of the wall here through to the inside. So then I'm going to cut flat here. And then I'm just going to go inwards. I'm going to take my beak tool because that's nice and big. Towards the center. And then I'm going to just go back out towards the foot again. And what I'm doing here, which you probably can't see, is that as I'm going outwards, instead of dragging it, I'm kind of like rolling it. So I'm starting in the middle and I'm rolling it to the outside. And you can do the same coming in too. So when you're trimming, you want to make sure that your tool isn't like flat like this. You want to kind of have it held at an angle. And so let's go ahead and turn to our side and see if the inside here lines up with the outside. And it kind of looks like we trimmed far enough here, but the outside just needs to come down just a smidge. So I'm going to do that. Yeah, we're looking real good there. All right, and then if you want, you can just trim up this a little bit so it's a little nicer looking. Trimming is probably one of the hardest. Okay, I say everything's the hardest, but trimming is probably one of the things that will take you the longest to get used to. For me, I think even till this day, I still don't trim 100% perfect, and I don't even know if you can say perfect about anyone's pots, although there's some beautiful pots out there. but it's gonna take you a long time, and I guarantee you a lot of the time you're gonna work so hard on one of your pieces, and then you finally get to the trimming stage and you're gonna cut through the bottom. And that's just the worst feeling in the world. But like I said in my last video, is 9 out of 10 times when you're starting pottery, your things are gonna fail. But the more you do it, the more your brain and your hands just understand what they're doing, and it's gonna turn into 1 out of 10 things, or 1 out of 20 things, or eventually you'll hardly ever have an incident. So this is looking pretty good here. This is basically what we want. That's nice and simple. We're gonna want to put our chop in it. If you haven't decided on a chop yet, that's fine. I use my initials. You can have a symbol, you can do whatever you want. I just have my initials here and they're vertical. And I know that the camera is in mirror, but okay, so once we're done, you can go ahead and peel these off. So it's also going to take you a while to know when you're done without actually taking the bowl off. Sometimes don't sign it until you're done unless you don't really care. But sometimes what I like to do is when I'm not sure, I will take the bowl off and then I will look at it and feel around it and see if I feel like it's too heavy in some spots or too thick in other spots. And if that is the case, then just go ahead and put it back on the wheel, center it, put the anchors back on it, and trim what you need. And you can do that as many times as you need until you get the shape you want. We're done here with this bowl. I'm gonna go ahead and do the other bowl just so you can see one more time what it looks like. And this time I'm gonna go a little bit faster. All right, so I'm gonna feel in here and see where I wanna put the foot.
You were my best friend, didn't care about the rules, good on the weekends. I'll be in fools, drifting to deep space. So brave and so stupid, just like the movies. I was gonna stay in the fight with you, just thinking we would do this until we couldn't do it. Each and every high, every night with you, you and me so clueless. We were just broken, shattered, singing along to nothing matters. Stray around like nighttime rumors. We were in too deep, in your worn-out sweaters, thinking we'll be young forever. Driving in your mom's old hatchback, and we were in too deep. Cause I'm thinking we'll be young, be young, be young. Cause I'm thinking we'll be young forever. Cause I'm thinking we'll be young, be young, be young. Cause I'm thinking we'll be
All right, so I'm not gonna do any more because we're starting to shatter here. Don't worry if your piece shatters. Some people actually like that effect. There's tools out there you can use to actually shatter your piece. I don't want to shatter it. I don't personally like it. And this wasn't intentional either. I just had my bowl was unevenly dry. So before I sign my piece, I'm gonna make sure that we cut evenly, we cut enough. This part right here is where I kept saying it's too high. I didn't cut low enough. It could be cut a little bit more, but you know what? It's like millimeters. It's not gonna make too huge of a difference. This is pretty nice even bowl. They're looking pretty good. The walls are about the same thickness. The bottom is about the same thickness as the walls. That's what you want. A nice little foot. So we can go ahead and sign our piece. you're concerned about some of these imperfections here or the discoloration, you can, what I usually like to do is wait till it's dry, and then I take like a Brillo brush and I gently kind of go over the surface, and that will pick off like the big boogery little pieces and smooth it down a bit. Like the lip here, we can do some smoothing. But I'm not, as far as the color is concerned, you don't have to really worry about that, because once you fire the piece and you glaze it, you're not going to see that. Unless you're going to do a clear glaze, then I wouldn't worry about it. If you want to take some of that discoloration off, like here from the wheel head, you can just wet your sponge and just kind of brush that and clean it up a bit. Get some of that discoloration off. Those boogery pieces out of there. If you want, you don't have to do that. I don't care, because I'm going to glaze it, you're not going to see it. And so there we are, we have both of our bowls, and we're done. So this one you can see has a bunch of little like extra bits of clay here. Again, you can take the Brillo pad once it's that dry and just smooth those off. So there we are, there's our bowls. So that's the end of our video. Hopefully you have a nice trimmed up bowl. In our next video, we're gonna be going over how to make mugs. So if you want to get notifications, go ahead and click subscribe and the little notification bell. And I look forward to seeing you in our next video. Bye. We have uneven drying here, but bless you. That was a big sneeze. Yeah? You okay? Oh, okay. Good girl. Eyeballs. Good eyeballs right there. And please like. No, I'm not gonna put that in there. I hate begging. And in our next video, we'll be going over how to throw teacups and mugs. We'll be going over how to throw mugs. And then... And in our next video, we're gonna be going over how to... In our next video, we're going to be going over how to... Wow! Please help! Helper, help! Double-sided guy. The double-sided tool. I think having a not gross needle... This is bad presentation already. So the reason we trim is because... So the reason we trim is because I just do it.
I don't need you here to feel good. No, I'm not angry. I got better things to do. Tell your friends I will be just fine.